Hello there, an older woman greeted me from behind the counter. She was in her 60s, with silver hair tied back in a loose bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. Hi, I said, forcing a smile. I'm just looking around. Of course. Take your time. Everything here has a story, you know. She smiled warmly, and for a moment, I felt like I belonged in the space. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers over the spines of books, each one a small treasure from the past. As I reached the back of the store, a particular object caught my eye. It was an old music box, its surface faded with time, but still beautifully carved. I picked it up gently, turning it over in my hands. The moment I touched it, I was flooded with memories. My mother had given me a music box when I was young, just like this one. It had played a soft lullaby, one that I could still hear in the back of my mind. It had been the last gift she gave me before she passed away. A wave of emotion hit me unexpectedly. The music box felt like a piece of her, something I'd forgotten, buried beneath years of grief and loss. The shopkeeper approached, noticing my reaction. A sentimental piece, huh? I nodded, my throat tight. It reminds me of someone I've lost. She studied me for a moment, her eyes gentle. Sometimes the things we lose can be found in unexpected places. I looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Don't hold on to the past too tightly, she said, her voice soft yet firm. It shapes us, yes, but it doesn't define us. This box is a reminder of where you've been, but it shouldn't keep you from where you're going. Her words settled in my chest, heavy and true. I hadn't realized how much I was still clinging to the past, clinging to the idea of who I once was and who I thought I would always be. I looked at the music box again, and this time, I didn't feel the pang of sorrow. Instead, I felt a sense of release, as if I could let go of the grief and start moving forward. I bought the music box, carrying it back to Elisa's house. Did you find something? Elisa asked when I arrived home, her voice light and curious. I nodded, setting the music box on the counter. I did. She looked at it for a moment, then met my eyes. It's beautiful. What does it mean to you? It's a reminder, I said softly, of where I've been, and maybe a sign that I need to stop looking back so much. Elisa smiled warmly, her expression understanding. You're on the right path, Hannah. I'm proud of you. I wasn't sure I believed it, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. The weeks slipped by, and the weight of my past, while never fully gone, seemed to loosen its grip on me. I spent more time with Elisa, and we formed a quiet, comfortable routine. In the mornings, we would have coffee together before she went to work, talking about everything and nothing. Her stories of her students, her life in the city before coming here, and the small, everyday things that made up her world helped me slowly rebuild a sense of normalcy. I spent my afternoons exploring the town, walking through the nearby park or sitting by the lake with a book in hand. The quiet of it all gave me time to reflect, but also to breathe. I no longer felt like I was drowning in my own sorrow. I could see the world outside of my grief, even if only in glimpses. One afternoon, Elisa asked me if I'd like to come with her to a local gathering. It was a small community event in the park, a potluck picnic where neighbors brought food to share, played games, and chatted. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to engage with so many people. The thought of it made my chest tighten. You don't have to stay long, Elisa said, her voice warm but insistent. But I think it would be good for you to get out, to see that life is still happening around you. Her words resonated with me. Life was happening, and I had been standing still, frozen in place for far too long. That evening, I put on a simple dress, something I hadn't worn in years, and joined her. The park was alive with laughter and chatter. Children ran in circles, adults gathered in small clusters, sharing stories and food. The air was thick with the smell of grilled vegetables and fresh bread. It felt foreign to me, this sense of life continuing while mine had paused. Elisa introduced me to a few people, her neighbors, most of whom were friendly and easygoing. I smiled, nodded, but felt an undercurrent of unease that I couldn't shake. I hadn't socialized in so long that the thought of small talk seemed overwhelming. But Elisa's presence made it easier to stay. She was a constant, a steady force in my life. As the evening wore on, I found myself sitting on a bench by the lake, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, the water shimmering under the fading light. I closed my eyes and just breathed, feeling the cool air against my skin. You look peaceful, a voice said, breaking my thoughts. I turned to see a man standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, a quiet smile on his face. I don't know about peaceful, I said, returning his smile. But I'm trying. I can tell, he said, taking a step closer. You're new to town, right? I nodded. Yeah, I've been staying with Elisa for a little while. I'm Ben, he said, extending a hand. I live just a few blocks away. I've seen you around the park, but we haven't really had the chance to talk. I shook his hand. Hannah. Nice to meet you, Hannah. I know it's not easy coming into a new place, especially when you're carrying a lot with you. His tone was casual, but there was something in his eyes, an understanding, a depth, that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't expected. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. What could I say? That my life had crumbled in front of me. That my children didn't want me anymore. That I had no idea what to do with myself. Instead, I offered a small, uncertain smile. I'm getting there, slowly. He nodded, his expression softening. I get it. Just know you don't have to do it alone. Elisa's a great friend, but if you ever want to talk or just hang out, I'm here. I was taken aback. He was offering me something I hadn't known I needed, connection. The thought of it made my chest tighten with both gratitude and fear. I'll keep that in mind, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Ben gave me one last smile before he turned to leave. Take care of yourself, Hannah. I watched him walk away, my thoughts swirling. I hadn't expected anyone to reach out to me like that. Elisa had always been there, of course, but this was different. I sat there for a while longer, the weight of his words lingering. Life was still happening, and maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to stop watching it from the sidelines. The days following the picnic were filled with uncertainty. I found myself thinking about Ben more than I cared to admit. There was something about the way he had spoken to me, like I wasn't just some broken woman who had fallen off the edge of her own life. He had seen me, really seen me. But I wasn't ready for more. My heart was still too raw, too bruised from everything I had lost. I had enough to deal with just finding my own footing again. Elisa noticed my withdrawn mood as the days went on. We were sitting at the kitchen table one afternoon, drinking tea, when she looked up from her phone and asked, "Is everything okay, Hannah?" I hesitated. "I'm fine." She didn't seem convinced. "You've been distant lately." "Is it something?" I said. "No," I said quickly. "It's not you. It's Jess." I trailed off, unsure of how to explain it. "Just what?" Elisa pressed gently, her voice full of concern. I stared into my teacup, swirling a liquid absent-mindedly. I don't know how to be around people anymore. I don't know how to open up, how to trust. Elisa's eyes softened. She reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "You don't have to do it all at once. Just take it one step at a time. I'm here, no matter what." I nodded, but inside, I still wasn't sure. Could I really start over? Could I open my heart again, knowing what I had lost? I wasn't sure, but for the first time in a long while, I felt the stirrings of hope. As the weeks passed, I found myself growing more accustomed to my new life. The mornings were still the hardest, when the silence of the house seemed louder than ever. But I was slowly learning how to fill those spaces with something other than pain. I had started to volunteer at a local animal shelter, something to keep my mind busy and give me a sense of purpose. The animals, with their unconditional affection, were a reminder that love and connection could still be found in the most unexpected places. One afternoon, while I was cleaning out one of the kennels, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Ben standing in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, a familiar smile on his face. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "I come by sometimes to help out," he said, stepping into the room. "Elisa mentioned you've been volunteering here." I shrugged, feeling a little self-conscious. "It's something to do. Helps me get out of my head." "I get that," Ben said. He paused for a moment before his gaze softened. "I hope you're doing better. You seemed a little distant the other day." I hesitated before answering, unsure of how much to reveal. "I'm trying," I said finally. "It's not easy, you know." Ben nodded in understanding. "I get it, but you're not alone. You don't have to figure it all out on your own." There was something in his tone that made my heart flutter. A warmth, a sincerity that made me feel like I was being seen for the first time in a long while. It was hard not to be drawn to him, to his quiet strength and compassion. "I appreciate that," I said quietly. "Really?" Ben smiled. "Anytime, Hannah. Anytime." As he turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of longing. There was a pull toward him, something I couldn't quite define, but I wasn't ready to act on it. Not yet. The next few days were filled with small interactions, Elisa's laughter over coffee, the comforting routine of volunteering at the shelter, and even brief, friendly chats with Ben whenever our paths crossed. But there was something else I was noticing, a shift in the air, a tension that I couldn't quite explain. It was like my heart was opening up, slowly, cautiously, and with that came the fear of what it might mean. One night, after I finished up at the shelter, I found myself at Elisa's house. She was sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, scrolling through her phone. "You look tired," she said, noticing me standing in the doorway. I shrugged. "Just a lot on my mind." Elisa tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly in concern. "Is it Ben?" I froze, surprised. "What? No, why would you think that?" She raised an eyebrow. "You've been spending a lot of time with him, and you've been quieter lately. I thought maybe." She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. I sighed, sitting down beside her. "I don't know. It's complicated. I don't know if I'm ready for that. For anything, really. Elisa took a sip of her wine, studying me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. It's okay to want something more, Hannah. It's okay to let someone in again. I shook my head. I don't know if I can. I've been hurt too much, and I don't want to mess things up with him. You won't know unless you try, Elisa said softly. But you have to be honest with yourself first. Do you want to try? I stared at the floor, torn between the fear of opening up and the undeniable pull I felt toward Ben. The thought of letting him in, of risking my heart again, made my chest tighten, but Elisa was right. I couldn't keep hiding forever. I don't know, I whispered, feeling the weight of her words. Elisa gave me a soft smile. Take your time, but don't shut yourself off completely. A few days later, I found myself standing in front of Ben's door, my heart pounding in my chest. I had decided, if only for myself, that it was time to stop running from the possibility of something more. The doubt still lingered, but I had to at least try to see what was there, even if it meant facing my own vulnerability. When Ben opened the door, he seemed surprised to see me, but then his face softened into a welcoming smile. Hannah, he said, his voice warm. What's up? I swallowed, trying to steady my nerves. I was wondering, if you're free tonight, maybe we could grab dinner? I'd like to talk. Ben's expression shifted to one of genuine curiosity. Of course, let me just get my jacket. As we walked to a nearby cafe, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. The air between us was charged, though neither of us said anything about it. I was nervous, unsure of what was about to happen, but I had made the decision to take this step. We sat at a small table by the window, the soft hum of the cafe surrounding us. Ben looked at me with quiet attentiveness as I fidgeted with my napkin. I've been thinking, I began, my voice a little shaky, about everything, about us, and I don't know what I want yet, but I think I'm ready to figure it out. I don't want to keep running from it. Ben was silent for a moment, watching me with those soft, understanding eyes of his. Finally, he spoke. You don't have to have it all figured out, Hannah. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm here whenever you're ready. His words, simple as they were, gave me a sense of peace I hadn't known I needed. Maybe it wasn't about rushing into anything. Maybe it was about allowing myself to take it one step at a time, without the pressure of expectations. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of my fears lift just a little. Thank you, I whispered, for being patient with me. Ben smiled, his eyes warm. I don't mind waiting if it means you're being honest with yourself. As the weeks turned into months, I allowed myself to settle into a rhythm I hadn't thought was possible. I continued to volunteer, I spent time with Elisa, and most importantly, I let myself open up to the idea of Ben. Our connection grew quietly, without the rush or the pressure that I had feared. It wasn't about jumping into something intense. It was about letting our bond grow naturally, with respect and understanding. I still had bad days, days when the grief would overwhelm me, when the weight of my past felt too much to bear. But those days were fewer now, and when they came, I knew I didn't have to face them alone. I was starting to see that life, despite all of its heartbreak, could still be beautiful, and maybe, just maybe, I could learn to love again.